one of my favorites right now, like as far as comedy goes, is Schitt's Creek, which I'm allowed to say because it's not a swear; it's a family name. But yeah, just a really, really lovely example of queer acceptance in community and celebration. So to start off, we want to talk a little bit about specifically some family-friendly movies and films before we move on into other things. Anyone who wants to start?
Well, I know when I was a young teen, two of the movies that I saw that they're not exactly family friendly, but they're friendly enough at the time was Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and The Birdcage.
I remember watching Birdcage when I was little.
Yeah, I love that movie. And also love Steven Universe. That's a truly just a phenomenal show, and so sad that it's over. But that one would be my biggest recommendation for sure.
I love Steven Universe so much. It is, I know I've said this to you all a few times because I love it so much, but it's such just like a soft and affirming kind of show. It's really beautiful. Yeah. Also on my cartoon kick has been She-Ra and the Princesses of Power.
Yes.
It's a lot of fun. And the representation is really just, it's not like proving anything. It's just their world is full of queer people and it's celebrated. And yeah, great example of just very accepting and affirming family-friendly material that's not like, it doesn't have to take the time to explain to your kids what's going on because it's just the world.
I just started watching that recently, and it was kind of stunning just because I remember playing with like the He-Man toys when I was a little kid, and to kind of think from going from that, it seemed like a very kind of boys' boy thing, and what they're doing now with She-Ra and the Princess of Power, it's really heartening and just positive.
Mm-hmm. So, when you were young, what's some of the first movies or first TV shows that you remember seeing LGBTQ plus representation in?
One of the ones that made the biggest impact on me when I was younger was a film called The Incredibly True Story of Two Girls in Love. And it's about an interracial couple just exploring their sexuality and traveling around together. And I remember like some dating myself here. I had to go to Blockbuster and like beg my father to let me rent it.
I remember back in the day, it was a British movie called Get Real, and it was kind of like if John Hughes did a gay dramedy, and I remember going to Suncoast Video, surreptitiously buying the VHS, and then watching it that night in another room in the house, making sure that I had the remote in hand, so if my parents came in, I could switch over to a regular TV channel. But it held up well. I've watched it since then on DVD, and it was a amusing movie. So,
some of the ones that I remember, like you said earlier, The Birdcage. I don't know if people consider it to be. I know some people don't like it, but Rocky Horror Picture Show. I watched it when I was very. I remember it came on like I don't think it was ABC Family. It came on a channel, and I remember. Like I snuck and watched because I knew I wasn't supposed to watch it, but I remember watching that. And then as I got a little older, Brokeback Mountain was one of the first ones that I think I saw it really kind of represented. But I think Rocky Horror will always be the first.
I saw Rocky Horror for the first time last year, and it changed my life. It's like a piece of my bi identity that I needed desperately. So good.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, my friends and I were really into Rocky Horror Picture Show, and we used to dress up and go to the movies with all these props, and just when different lines and songs came on, like you would throw your props at the stage and everything, and it was a lot of fun.
You had the full Rocky Horror experience.
Yeah, it was magenta.
Awesome.
It's amazing. I think some of the earliest things I remember seeing representation in was just kind of like the gay best friend character in rom-coms. So it'd always be some person that has like, a handful of lines at best, and then maybe at the end they like make eye contact with another guy across the room. Then like that's the extent of their gay presence on screen. But also like coded Disney villains, like Ursula and Scar.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if I can really put a finger on like something that had like honest to goodness LGBTQ plus representation until I was older. But yeah, I find myself like going back at stuff I watched when I was younger and like queering it because there wasn't much for me then. So like Miss Frizzle is my lesbian legacy because she's voiced by Lily Tomlin, and then the reboot it's Kate McKinnon, so she's like a lesbian fairy godmother.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great.
So we've talked about this a little bit already, but I'd love to hear some more about movies and TV shows that really impacted you in regards to pride and LGBTQ plus identities.
There was this movie that I watched when I was younger it was a movie that I just didn't expect at all what it was going to be about. My friend just told me I had to watch it, and it was called But I'm a Cheerleader. And it's about a cheerleader who starts coming out, and her parents send her to like a reprogramming camp, but there she meets her love interest. And at the very end, she does a little cheer to like win over this girl's heart. I just loved it. It always reminded me like just like of my little baby queer self.
For me, I have to say, and I know it's like super controversial now, but Call Me by Your Name, the ending where his father, has the talk with him, that for me, just that whole scene of his father having a talk with him. I even have like a ring with the quote on it. Like it was like that special to me. That just, I don't know, it was beautiful in a way.
More recently, the Netflix sequel of Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City, where the original was a series of books, and then it became a PBS series, and then Netflix did a kind of a revival of some of the original actors, but then they expanded where it's kind of like a fairy tale version of San Francisco as a queer haven. But the original series had a lot of kind of primarily white actors, and so they expanded with actors of different races and different gender identities. And it's really, honestly, the final episode of this series still makes me tear up.
I should get back to that one. I started it and kind of lost interest because there's other things to watch. But anytime I hear that like the last episode of something really holds up, I want to get back to it. For me, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a big one. That was like my queer realization, specifically with Willow and Tara, of course. But yeah, I love Tara very deeply. So yeah, that was a big moment for me. Let's see. We're kind of zipping through these a little quickly. I don't want to move through them too fast. Any other stuff you want to circle around on that has been impactful?
I'd like to double down on Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, because that was my first time seeing somebody who is trans represented. And I just didn't even really understand what that was. And I don't know. It just made me think about possibilities of different things. And that's something I'd like to see more of, is more trans identities, more trans people of color characters.
Mm-hmm. I've been watching Pose. I'm in the second season right now, and that has been just a very dynamic experience in, like, you know, on the one hand, like connecting with my community's history, but also, of course, having a view into you know, worlds and identities that are very, very different from my own experiences. It's a really incredible show.
It really is. I mean, it's so good that kind of like Dalia was mentioning earlier, like once you watch it, it's so good, you just want to turn right around and just watch it again.
Mm-hmm. I just watched the episode with Candy's last performance, and just an absolute disaster. She was amazing, of course. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say something kind of interesting about Pose is I've noticed that, you know, even people that I know, that they'll say like, I don't agree or that, and then they'll start watching Pose and they'll like see the history, and you know, it's almost like their journey of acceptance. I've kind of noticed with Pose, it's like the show that kind of walks people through that. And I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I love the representation of, it's really opened up the idea of the queer community, I think, even for a mainstream audience, where it's beyond just like white cis guys. And I remember the season 2 opening when they had the scene where the actors MJ Rodriguez and Billy Porter are at the Hart's Island burial site. I honestly kind of broke down sobbing, because I just learned about the history of that maybe like a year before that in a New York Times article. And it's like the great thing where mainstream entertainment is telling a queer history that gets covered up and we're not revealed. It's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really love how it like honors this really, really rich world of ballroom without just turning it into a spectacle.
Yeah.
It doesn't let you just take it in for fun. You have to also sit there through the abuse and the pain and all that mixed in with, you know, the joy and vibrancy.
Billy Porter is a national treasure. That's all I was going to say.
Absolute gift. Yes.
Yes. His outfits too.
Yeah, I mean, he makes such a splash on the red carpet like every time. It's just like stunning how he just keeps wowing me. And I'm always like excited to see what he's going to wear next.
You could probably make like a lookbook from all of his outfits. It's just like page after page. But also that's something that I think is great, that even outside of the show, you know, he still wears outfits, he still is like himself. And it's not like a shame sort of thing, like where he can't be himself. Like he is himself. He wears his he's like as proud as can be, and I love that.
He's making an impact, yeah. And I know, like, if you follow Inya Moore, who plays Angel on like Twitter and social media, she's very strong in voicing her support of Black Lives Matter and just basic human rights movements, which is really nice to see.
Yeah.
Is this viewers advisory just turning into a pose fan club?
I'm not mad about it.
No, I don't think it's a problem.
We could go for 4 hours on that.
Let's see. We can go to the next one for a bit. Are there any films or shows that come to mind that you feel haven't handled this topic in this community very well, or that you just don't like for whatever reason?
Well, the only one I can really think of that where I was just like, it's mostly with the show. It's not necessarily the representation. Was for the L Word. I was obsessed with the original L Word and watched it diligently to the end. And then to have the end just sort of jump the shark itself so many times was like really disappointing to me, where I was just like, you got a show about gay women, you know, like make it a good show, you know, because it used to be so addictive.
I felt kind of the same way about the American Queer as Folk, whereas I felt like when like the first 2 seasons, when they kind of riffed off of the original British series, it was more interesting, down to earth, centered on the characters. But in some of the later seasons, it just got so ridiculously over the top and soap opera-ish in a not great way. But
yeah, most of the stuff that was coming to mind for me was kind of the same sort of thing. Like, not that I really had a problem with the representation itself, more just like other things, like Queer Eye, for example. I mostly love that show, but they do pull in like some fat shaming, which is unfortunate. And one thing with that also, which I guess is more on the representation side, I do think it would be great if they also talked a bit more about some of the main cast, their identities outside of just being gay men, like Jonathan being non-binary, or Anthony has shared on other places that he identifies more as fluid rather than strictly gay, and they just kind of let them be gay men for the sake of the show. It'd be a great opportunity, to like bring in some of that complexity.
It would add a lot more to the show, especially when they might be helping someone who has a similar background as them. You know, they could share their story with them, and I feel like they don't do that, and like they really could. And I don't know if it's, I don't want to say the actors, but I don't want to say it's them themselves, but I don't know, maybe it could actually be Netflix or people there saying, you know, maybe don't do that. But I know the new season just came out, but hopefully in the next season we'll see a couple more changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That show is like my happy place.
It really is wonderful. Yeah, I don't want to complain too much about it because it's very wonderful. But yeah, there are things like that. Nick brought up in the chat that they do bring in personal experiences with other things, like Jonathan Venice with HIV or Anthony and substance abuse. I really appreciate it when Bobby brings in his experience growing up in a very conservative and homophobic environment. So, but yeah,
when I heard him talk about that, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm Bobby.
That gets to me every time. That's one thing I do like that they've handled. How he like just personally isn't generally comfortable going into churches, and the producers haven't like forced him in there as some like transformative arc for the sake of the episode.
I love how they didn't force him to walk in, and that everyone respected that he just wanted to stand outside while they all went in, because it's understandable, and it's just nice to see, like you said, they're not forcing it for the show to make it look special and he's changed, you know,
because it's not that simple.
Yeah.
See, what's something you'd like to see more of?
I'd like to see more books to movies.
Yes.
I haven't gotten a chance to see the film, but I read the book, The Miseducation of Cameron Post. And I think that there's just so much good, especially for young adults, queer literature out there that like it would be amazing to see it as a movie. Like it would be amazing if Aristotle and Dante
Oh yes. Oh
Discover
my
the
goodness.
Universe was like some kind of live action thing.
Even like a Hulu TV show. I feel like they could make like a little
Oh,
mini
yeah.
series out of that.
I would take a mini series.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like if they did it the same way they did Normal People, I feel like that would be perfect. Like people would love that.
The other thing I want to see more of is queer representation in science fiction. I think that it's so easy to kind of other people by making them an alien or something like that. But that's why like Star Trek was really important, like with Dax on Deep Space Nine. Like that was a big deal in the 90s. And what is his name? And Michael Anthony Rabb on Star Trek Discovery.
And Wilson Cruz.
Mm-hmm. But I want more. Give me more.
I absolutely agree. I hold that sci-fi is just an inherently queer genre. I think it's all gay. It would be nice if it was more overt about it instead of subtext.
Well, I have it rumored today that in the next iteration that they're going to make Kirk bi. And there's a bit of a kerfuffle on the internet about it.
Of course.
But I mean, if you think about Kirk was always like getting with these like aliens all the time. Like who knows what their genders are even like, and they might have like 7 genders.
He went for anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
But going off of what you were saying, Rebecca, the fact that there's so many books being written now with queer science fiction and fantasy, both more adaptations would be wonderful. But then also I really want to see, because I think maybe it's kind of the whole aspect of we thought we were going to get more than we did with Finn and Poe in the latest Star Wars films.
Yeah.
I want to see that kind of queer couple in science fiction and fantasy where it's just part of the fun adventure. Like, a serious drama would be great as well, but just a fun adventure would be awesome too. Mm-hmm. So I'd really love to see that.
Yeah, I really feel like Finn is bi because like he is interested in Rey and he's interested in Poe, and so in my mind, that's my little fantasy that he's actually bi.
Yeah.
But in the last,
it was there. They just didn't follow through with it.
There was a queer kiss in the very last movie that they just made, and that was kind of a big deal. And but luckily, I didn't hear too much like negative buzz about it. So like even that's a big step. Because we're talking about Disney here.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is Disney. Yeah. I feel like we've got, we have some good sci-fi queer stuff when it comes to like cartoons like She-Ra or Steven Universe. And there's a lot in like graphic novels that would be great adaptations, but more like live action sci-fi, more adult stuff would be really nice.
There's a
yes.
That's what I'm rooting for. I might be a little biased.
No, absolutely. Yeah, needs to happen. There was on the line of adaptations, there's a superhero book I read last year with a trans superhero where part of her inheriting her superpowers is also like a physical transformation for her. And it's called, oh shoot, just left my mind. Dreadnought. It's called Dreadnought.
Okay.
It's an amazing book and would make such a good adaptation because it has just a really rich world. Like the author gets into like science of it and the politics of it and all the stuff I like to see for like really good sci-fi world building. Great adaptation.
Yeah, I'm glad that you bring up graphic novels too, because like one of my favorites to read is Batwoman. Batwoman is a lesbian, and she's kicked out of the military under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and so then she reinvents herself as Batwoman. And I was excited to see that when they adapted that to the show, that they kept all that.
What did you think of the show? I haven't watched it yet.
It's good. I mean, I like all those CW shows, to be honest with you. I like Supergirl, and I loved Arrow and The Flash, and all those shows are really great, actually. They're my guilty little pleasures.
Nick said, is there a queer show on Disney Channel now? Is there?
Is there?
Oh,
I don't know.
I don't know. A lot of touch with that.
I do know there was some. I'm not sure.
That's amazing. That was that. Like they did, and like no one's complaining about it. That
I did hear with the new DuckTales reboot with David Tennant as Scrooge McDuck. I think in the most recent season they did have one episode where there were two gay dads. And of course, it was a kerfuffle, but still, it was like they just went ahead and did it. So, cool.
Awesome. I'm checking out the article that Nick just sent right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard of the show. Okay.
Maybe we're all too old to hear about these things. That's great.
I didn't even know they
made
new shows like that.
I knew that there had been some controversy around how they moved that series that was related to Love, Simon, Love, Victor. They moved it it was going to be on Disney Plus, moved it to Hulu instead. So there were people wondering if that was because of the LGBTQ plus content. So it's great that they're like actually putting that content on Disney Plus. It's good.
But didn't Disney just make? I remember seeing it on Instagram, like a new animated movie.
That the animated short. I read about that too. Yeah, I haven't watched it.
Okay, I didn't know. Is that on Disney Plus? Do you know?
I think so. I don't have Disney Plus. I think it is.
Okay.
I saw an article about some petition that some parents group had sent in about it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
To that I say, get over it.
Yes.
This is a good question for you, Chris.
Oh, documentaries.
Yeah.
So Before Stonewall is very good. It's interview. I think it came out in like either the late 80s or the early 90s, and there's just interviews with a variety of LGBTQ people about their lives before the era of Stonewall, and then also Screaming Queens riot at Compton's cafeteria. It's like it's short, hour-long documentary about 3 years before Stonewall in San Francisco was the protest spontaneous riot at Compton's cafeteria, where trans women and straight kids protested against police violence in the San Francisco Tenderloin neighborhood in 1966, 3 years before Stonewall. And then there's a few kind of documentaries of the queer community in the AIDS era that I previously mentioned. United in Anger. It's a very nuts and bolts documentary on how queer and HIV positive AIDS activists fought for greater issues of healthcare and government acknowledge of AIDS. And it's very educational in that it goes into how they got the actions, what actions worked, what protests worked and didn't work. And that was done by Jim Hubbard and Sarah Schulman.
Nick is bringing up the connections between Paris is Burning and Pose also. I haven't seen Paris is Burning yet. It's definitely very high on my list.
So yeah, that
I saw it when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is from to my teenage remembrance was largely about ballroom culture, but for Black and Latinx communities, queer communities. And I know that it's somewhat controversial because somebody felt that the white woman making this movie was exploitative of the people that were her subjects. But I don't remember getting any of that when I was younger. I just remember liking it so much. And it's interesting to see all these things that have trickled down into gay culture at large that originally came from Paris is Burning. And then, of course, Pose, is about the ballroom culture and trans Black and brown folks. The bit about Electra's trick that goes wrong represents the actual body that was found about murder.
Yeah, that was a real life scenario that happened in Paris is Burning, where a queen mummified the body of a trick that went wrong, and Pose adapted that into a fictional storyline.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And what you're saying, it's from what I've read, it's very true that, because I think it was the fact that the director got famous off of doing Paris is Burning, but then the actual subjects still were in their regular struggling lives. I think that became that issue over the years.
Yeah, thanks for clearing that up, Chris. You are a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I'm just a history geek.
That part with the body was just chilling. It's just like in her closet. When she says to Blanca, like, he'll always be with me, or he's mine now, or something like that.
There's actually a recent movie I saw. It came out in 2018. It was called Saturday Church, and it's a drama about a Black genderqueer teen growing up in New York, and he's just lost his father. His religious strict aunt comes in to help take care of the family, and he ends up going to New York on the Christopher Street Piers, and ends up befriending and becoming a part of the trans Black and Latin queer community. But two of his kind of like found family members end up, if the actors playing them are MJ Rodriguez and Inya Moore from Pose. And if it literally came out like a year or two before Pose started, so.
Awesome. What was that one called again?
Saturday Church.
I'm going to jot that down.
It's kind of a drama. It has some musical interludes. And apparently it was the director. It's a real life program where they convert a church. I'm not sure if it's still going on, but it was at the time it was a real life church around that area in New York where it became a safe haven for the queer community every Saturday. Mm-hmm. And they'd have the ball shows and yeah.
I love the idea of a ball in a church.
Mm-hmm.
I have not watched Chris and Dawn on Canopy. Next question. Any of you?
Oh, that's a good one.
Is that a documentary as well?
Yep. Okay. Yeah, it was the British writer Christopher Isherwood, most famously known for the novel A Single Man that was made into a movie with Colin Firth. several years back. It was kind of like one day in the life of a gay man. But he had a partner, Don Bacardi, who was an artist, and it was kind of controversial because kind of intergender relationship. Bacardi was 18 when they met. Isherwood was skidding close to 50, but it's kind of like it was the whole thing where kind of the mentor partner kind of molded the younger partner. But it's very fascinating just to see the whole kind of queer life during the 40s and 50s when things were not as open, but they still found their way to connect to each other and make a relationship work together.
Yeah, I really should watch more documentaries because I want to know more about my own community. And when you know where you came from, you know who you are.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Most of my queer viewing has been, TV shows on Netflix and stuff. But there are so many documentaries on Canopy on pride themed LGBTQ plus themes. It's a little overwhelming because there are so many. I don't know where to start, but I definitely have like a very extensive watch list. So everyone should check out Canopy. Add a few to your list there.
I've heard of A Secret Love, but I never watched it because it came up as recommended on Netflix, which tells you something to recommend that to me. My Netflix. Never heard of it.
Yeah, that one's high on my list too. Let's talk about our to watch lists. What's on your lists?
I actually have not seen Moonlight. I know enough about it to not necessarily need to see it, but I know.
You have to see it.
I know. So that's like my number one on my to watch list. I'm getting properly chastised, as I should, for not have seen it.
A Secret Love is definitely on my list, like we talked about. I'm also really excited about Disclosure, which is coming out on Netflix on Friday. It's a documentary about trans representation in Hollywood. I think it's produced by Laverne Cox, and has cast members from Pose, from Sense8, from a lot of different Netflix shows with queer representation.
Cool.
One on my list is Alyssa, and I hope I'm saying that right, Alyssa and Marcella. That one, it's on Netflix, I believe, but that one is kind of high on my list.
I am not familiar with that one. What's it about?
I believe, actually, I have a better thing on my phone that actually tells me what it's about because I just wrote down. I'm embarrassed that my notes aren't as good. If I remember correctly, I believe my Wi-Fi is off now. So it's like in 1901, and it's a woman who takes the identity of a man to end up being with the woman that she wants to be with, because she wouldn't have been able to do that.
Wow. What's that called?
Alyssa and Marcella. It's a Spanish movie, so they adapted it for Netflix. So I think I'm pretty sure you have to use subtitles for that. But I don't care. It's worth it. Yes. I'm horrible at just like reading them on the bottom. That was one of my issues with Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm not reading them along fast enough.
I still want to see Circus of Books. So, and someone recommended an older movie to me recently, The Watermelon Woman, which is
on Canopy, right?
I think it's on Canopy too. Yeah. It's apparently about. It was done in, I guess, either the mid or late '90s. And it's about a Black lesbian woman who, it's apparently kind of like a fictional documentary, and she's discovering this fictional actress who played a lot of kind of hidden Black lesbian roles in like the 1950s. I'm not quite sure. Like someone just recently recommended it to me, but it sounded interesting. So
Cool. Yeah, I remember putting that one on my list. It looked really good.
okay.
I have a movie I really want to rewatch. And Blue is the Warmest Color. Has anybody ever seen that?
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I hear an opinion in that.
I didn't like it. I'm sorry. I didn't like it.
That's how I feel about the Birdcage. So
Why didn't you like it, Dalia?
I felt the relationship was kind of toxic, to be quite honest. And then I know we're trying to stay family friendly, but the more intimate scenes to me seemed like they were kind of overdoing it for shock factor almost. Like they could have done it so much more intimately and more well done. And I feel like they just kind of did it for shock. And also so toxic, I didn't like it. It just felt like they were just
Well, that's actually what I liked about it, was that like it was just a perfect snapshot of young questioning teens.
is it a fictional movie or?
It is
like a
fictional.
drama?
It was
Okay.
it was a graphic novel, a French graphic novel, and then it was made into a French movie. And then there's always classics like Y Maman Tout Tambien, which was one of the ones that I absolutely loved when I was a teenager.
What else is on my list? Let's see. What would you say are some of the like must-sees for Pride Month?
Carol.
I need to see Carol.
I will forever rep
Carol is so
that
good.
movie. I will forever rep them. It's probably like that probably is my favorite. Like of the show, probably so is probably my favorite. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, even though I just saw it close second now, but Carol is definitely number one.
I should move those two to the top of my list.
I know this is a sad one, but Boys Don't Cry.
I remember watching that when I was really young. I don't know why I watched some of these when I was really young, but I remember watching that one, and it made me so sad. I just remember it was just so sad.
Heartbreaking, yeah.
It was hard for me to rewatch because when I got older, I wanted to watch it again, and it was just I forgot how sad it was. But
kind of going.
It represented the time of when it happened, sadly, and was the kind of like the heartbreaking reality for a lot of people who came out.
From the documentary and We Were Here, it's a documentary about the San Francisco queer community. The first part of it is like kind of the celebration time when you can move to San Francisco, find yourself as a queer person, celebrate life and love. And then when the AIDS crisis hit, how they completely changed the community. And it's one of the best, like, full emotional films I've seen where you feel sadness and grief, but like joy and love, because while the community is going through this very tragic, trying time, they're coming together like nothing else. And it does it in a very simplistic way where they just have 5 people they interview, and it's just like talking head interviews. There's still photos, but it's very simply done and just very, very emotional.
One that I'd like to recommend that you can watch on Canopy is Refugee. It's a Kenyan film about 2 young women who fall in love, and there's some tension because their dads are opposing political candidates, but then also just tension because they're 2 women in love. And it's a very beautiful movie, very soft. can be a little tough to watch it sometimes because it's very real, but I highly recommend it. And if you want something, go ahead.
I was gonna say I heard of it and I saw a scene, and I think that's from the movie where her mother gets like super upset with her, and that just made me. I was like, I'm gonna wait to watch this for when I'm like mentally okay to watch that, because I do. That's one definitely on high on my list.
Yeah, you definitely want to be in like the right place to set yourself up for it. I watched it in theaters and it was a bit much, but really, really good. Definitely worth watching. And if you want something more lighthearted, and this one's not super, it's not family friendly, but it's really fun. Sex Education on Netflix has a whole cast with loads of diverse representation all over the spectrum of identities. It's just a good time.
I heart Janelle Monáe so much. Oh, I can't believe we're talking about adaptations. We're talking about movies that were made a strong impact on us when we were young, and I didn't mention The Color Purple. So I definitely have to throw that one out there. If you read the book goes much more deeply into her relationship with Suge, but it still was wonderful to see that when I was younger. That was like one of the first movies that my mom like let me watch.
I remember watching that on VHS in my parents' and my grandparents' living room. I remember that vividly, watching that one. I know we were talking about it earlier, but another one that I definitely recommend would be, again, Desert Hearts. That one was really good, and it has not like the happiest ending, but it definitely does have a good ending where you're hopeful for the women, and you know it's gonna hopefully go in like a good direction, because they ended it well.
Got to say that.
You cry in a good way.
That's always nice.
Well, we have a few more minutes. Any other shows that have been, that maybe were on your list to mention but didn't quite fit into the conversation earlier that you'd like to throw out now?
One family-friendly show would be Adventure Time. And if you watch Adventure Time and then you understand my obsession with it and my obsession with Marceline and Princess Bubblegum, it's like, that's like my favorite to see fan art of those two characters.
Trying to see what all I've missed that I wanted to mention too.
Most people are agreeing with you, Rebecca. They love Adventure Time.
Yay!
Let's see. Oh, I have a little note. I don't have a segue into this. I'm just going to jump over to it. I've really been enjoying the trend of like surprise bisexuals showing up in TV shows that aren't like strictly queer shows, and then a character will realize they're bi or come out. There's been a bunch of those lately. So like Jane the Virgin had a character come out in the last or second to last season, realized she was bi. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, of course.
Yes.
With Rosa. Love Rosa. Absolutely. We talked about Fleabag a little bit before we went on air too. It's just like one scene where there's an interaction where you just realize the main character isn't super strict about who she's interested in, and it's not a big deal. It's just great when stuff like that shows up. Oh, and of course I have to mention How to Get Away with Murder also.
Oh yes. Oh my goodness, yes.
Mm-hmm. I haven't watched the last season yet. Because it just came out on Netflix. I'm not ready for it.
You have to.
Oh, and a whole bunch of comments about killing Eve.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely, killing Eve.
I think
Okay.
everyone went wild over the season finale. I remember I went on Twitter afterwards, and that's all everyone was talking about was the fact that they danced together. It was so nice. Speaking of bi, I think a movie that kind of does that, and it's an older movie, but it's still good, is My Own Private Idaho. I don't know if anyone
I love that.
seen that. I was about to
I
say
love that movie.
that kind of does it too. I mean, you just they kind of express it to each other like, hey, and it's done just so almost kind of just like you said, like it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a paper on that in my first year of college for like a pop culture class. I'm not quite sure the other students quite got about, but I enjoyed writing about it.
Well, we are getting close to the end here. Any last minute thoughts or recommendations before we go into our closing out stuff?
I just like that after being on this planet for darn near 40 years, it's been amazing to see representation grow and spread. I remember how hard it was to try and find queer films and queer television shows when I was younger. And like, I would nerd out over anything that I could get my hands on. And now we have like this wealth and tapestry of different identities and just different genres and stuff for kids. And it's really, I don't know. I know I'm a cornball, but it's very heartwarming for me.
I agree. Yeah, that's why I've been binging kids queer shows. It's really, really wonderful to have that available.
I can't even imagine how different I think I probably would have been if those had been on TV when I was little, because they most definitely were not. So I'm happy for kids now that they get to grow up watching that and become more accepting of themselves.
Kind of going back, a canopy nod, but also going back in time. There's a great documentary on the writer James Baldwin called James Baldwin, A Price of a Ticket. And it's just a documentary on his life. And he was a Black queer writer. And really, if you read his stuff, it's still so very applicable today. And he was kind of one of the early kind of queer icons that I came to as an English major and librarian. So
all right, so with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up. So I want to say thank you to all of our colleagues who have been chiming in the comments and keeping the conversation going. It's been great to see you all there. Special thanks to Elizabeth, who really put together the bulk of our discussion questions. She's kind of our viewers advisory queen in the whole library system, so she let us use her framework. And so yeah, thanks to her and her contributions. Definitely go to our website, pgcmls.info, to check out our Pride Heritage page. We have a whole bunch of resources linked there. And we also have a lot of events coming up that I want to let you know about. So the big one coming up soon is on the 17th. That will be a book talk with author George M. Johnson on All Boys Aren't Blue. A great one to look forward to in just a couple days. Later this week, we're going to have a Pride-themed career chat at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. And then Friday, we have a STEM program, a craft program, and a zine workshop, all Pride themed. So definitely check those out. Also, our Spanish community conversation group, or event, excuse me, is going to have 2 LGBTQ plus themed discussions on the 23rd and the 30th. So be sure to check those out too as well. All right. Thank you all for coming. Yeah, happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.